Greetings, Hempster. Thanks for tuning in to another hemp episode of Hemp Aware Radio. If you have a hemp company and you need help making sales or fine-tuning your website or getting seen with masterful branding, graphic, and web design, then feel free to reach out to us on hempaware.com. My name's Tyler Hemp here, your hemp-entrepreneurial host, here to empower and hemp-educate your hemposphere as usual, because hemp is important for food, shelter, clothing, energy, healing, plastics, fuel, and so much more. And on today's Hemp Educational Show, I have a very special guest and longtime colleague, Denny Finneran of Crucial Hemp. And Denny is what I like to call an original hempster. He has been working with the cannabis plant and investing in hemp-entrepreneurial ventures for over 30 years. And he's a farmer, he's an educator, and he's distributed several different types of hemp goods over the years in different markets, and worked with hemp fabrics and hemp clothing lines, and recently developing a cannabinoid CBD-based product line. And he's actually one of the original founding members of the Hemp Industries Association and has been a part of this movement since before it was actually cool to be. And he's traveled the world bringing hemp to communities and studying this plant like a true hempster. So in the spirit of supporting your hemp-entrepreneurial journey, I'm honored and delighted to introduce you to my buddy and longtime original hempster, Denny Finneran. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Oh, Tyler, thank you so much for having me on, buddy. I'm so honored. I'm so honored to be able to be on your show, and certainly humbled by your introduction, and grateful to have been able to dedicate my life to working with cannabis, hemp specifically. So, really excited to be on the show, and yes. So, here we are.
Well, tell me a little bit about like your upbringing, your roots. Like, where were you born, and then in a hemp nutshell, kind of what led you up to working with cannabis and the hemp plant?
Certainly, yes. So I was born in Chicago, Illinois. Irish Roman Catholic parents. And grew up there. My folks got too cold being there, so we moved down to Florida when I was about 8. And I went through high school there, and received a really good education with a lot of love from two great, wonderful parents. Happy Mother's Day to all those mothers out there.
Right. So
really, Dama, Ma. Mother plant for humanity. So certainly, as a lot of people got into cannabis recreationally, certainly in high school, and enjoyed, smoking it, but, also had, like many high school kids, experimented with alcohol, and trying to put a comparison between the two, and then seeing what alcohol would do to people, and then seeing how people reacted after smoking cannabis. There was kind of a lot of confusion, as there would be. Why is this thing so stigmatized, so illegal, and kind of demonized in culture, up until very recent times? So it got me wondering about it, and certainly down in Miami, was fortunate enough to be exposed to Caribbean Rastafarian culture, and seeing how that was the herb was important to those folks, and then kind of in my later between 10th and 11th grade, I was introduced to the Grateful Dead, and really fell in love with that band, and then the idea of touring in the community around Deadheads, and being in that space, certainly cannabis and psychedelics were kind of a part of the scene, and sort of opened my eyes to different points of view, and certainly international culture, all the that were for sale in the parking lot came from different places, and I always admired the hippies that would travel around and bring those wares to the shows. But all this is pre reintroduction of hemp. Now, I was very fortunate in I think it was like 1990 to be at a marijuana legalization rally where Jack Herer had the stage speaking, and it was a pretty small venue in Tucson, Arizona. I went to college. I left Miami to be closer to places where the Grateful Dead would play. Actually, that was kind of my criterion for finding a college, and so I wasn't quite smart enough to get into Berkeley, being an out-of-state B average student. But the University of Arizona did accept me. And so I kind of started a life in Arizona in between Grateful Dead tours. So I was a full-time Deadhead. I got to see a lot of shows, unfortunately, and even dropped out of college to pursue a life of being a Deadhead, and would travel to Guatemala and buy little trinkets to sell in the parking lot. And being in Arizona, I was close to the Mexican border, so I learned Spanish, and that kind of became a big part of my identity was kind of being a Southwest guy, and speaking Spanish and knowing a lot about Mexico, and then certainly indigenous peoples. And I of course continued enjoying marijuana, and then listening to Jack Herer speak. It was absolutely incredible to hear about why marijuana was illegal, and it being industrial hemp, and the competition that hemp was complicating the
petrochemical,
petrochemical, all that. And learning about the Hearsts and the lumber and the DuPonts and the Dows and nylons and whatnot, and then certainly the proof being the famous Hemp for Victory film. Now that pretty much that pretty much when Jack found that at the Library of Congress and started making copies, and then that started getting distributed and sold. That there was the government admitting that hemp had an important role to play in defeating the Axis powers, which was certainly biggest issue of the day in the 40s when that happened. So that plus how intuitively I knew how cannabis using it made me feel. There's no denying that truth. And so
the word cannabinoid, speaking of consuming cannabis and the active compounds being cannabinoids, the word cannabinoid, are you familiar with the origin of it? If not, I can tell you.
The dog.
Yeah, something to do with the dog. Exactly, canna for canine. But yeah, so incidentally, they discovered the cannabinoid system in our body after they discovered cannabinoids in plants, right? So they knew what cannabis was, so then they discovered THC, so they knew what cannabinoids were before they knew that we had an endocannabinoid system. So the word endocannabinoid, which is our own internal, cannabinoids, was coined as a result of the word cannabis. And so the word canna comes from, canine, but then bis is bi, like a binary system, or, two, like bi. But then cannabinoid, oid comes from the Greek word oidos or eidos, which means wisdom. So I see cannabinoids as wisdom molecules from the cannabis plant and within our own body. So anyway, a little fun fact on words. I actually love words. Yeah.
Who was speaking wisdom, was really smart back in the day. my good friend even from Two Star Dog. If you go way back, that was one of the kind of probably the highest fashion, no pun intended. We all tried to emulate what Stella was doing. She was fantastic designer and made wonderful clothes. And Two Star Dog was the name of their company in honor of working with hemp. So shout out to Two Star Dog, actually going way back.
And apparently that stems from the Dogon tribe in I think it's East Africa or maybe West Africa, that claims cannabis comes from the Sirius star system, and which is a binary star system. It's 2 stars, and apparently and then also Sirius, the star system, is in the constellation Canis Major. So it's like the 2-dog plant from the 2-dog star, which is obviously they're honoring, 2-star dog. But I didn't mean to cut off your story. So you were introduced to Jack in 1990. So that's when you went from being cannabis aware to being hemp aware. And you were like, wow, there's something here and there's deep roots. And you started diving into getting educated about that. And then you started different hemp companies. You've helped develop hemp fabrics, but what would you say are 2 of the biggest highlights for you as being a hemp entrepreneur? Like 2 of the biggest things that you've done in your life relating to hemp or cannabis?
Well, I was always intrigued by international travel, and to understand that hemp was still being used in other places in the world, and they had never had a hemp prohibition. It was never seen as super connected to psychoactive cannabis, just because the cultivars that were being used in some of these places just never were. I actually got to travel to places in the world to experience this. Early on I went to some trade shows in Germany, and certainly the cannabis cups in Amsterdam. There was a kind of a hemp section there in the early 90s, and those were fun. And I actually even won a cannabis cup for my hemp boxers, which was great. But
there was the Hanfrad in Germany.
There was the
Hanfrad, the hemp parade. It's called Hanfrad.
I don't quite remember the hemp parade. I wasn't part of that, but there was Cannabusiness. There was Cannabusiness back in the 90s, and certainly the Europeans had really nice, good sense. There was a company called Hemp House that was kind of the really wonderful young company with a lot of good things. Matthias Brokers, I can't remember exactly how to pronounce his name, but he was a German kind of an activist and entrepreneur and a good friend, and just seeing what people were doing with textiles. So back in the day, it was all about textiles. You had twine, of course, was kind of always available. So there was always twine available. Even in America, I guess furniture manufacturers to tie springs and whatnot would use hemp twine as something that it was kind of always around.
Garden supply stores, or even hippie shops. I remember in the 90s, head shops would have twine and stuff.
Yeah,
or like
certainly.
Little hippie shops.
Ecolution, Eric Steenstra, was really connected to a Hungarian Kenderfono, which was the big twine kind of supplier, twine and rope supplier. And he helped get that out with another company called American Mercantile, something out of Washington. And those guys actually were doing, like, at one point when they reintroduced the hemp textiles, it wound up getting so big, like you said, with the hippie shops and the girls and the beading and the necklaces and all that and the crochets. They were doing like a container a month of hemp twine. But certainly, like, so the international thing is really intrigued me. And I'd say early on, one of the most profound, wonderful experiences for me was being invited on a ethnobotanical journey through Yunnan province with Robert Connell Clark, who he in 1980 wrote a book called Marijuana Botany, but he was a part of the International Hemp Association out in the Netherlands, and those guys were out there getting hemp genetics to develop many of the cultivars that are now being used in Sativex from the company, and I can't remember the name of it right now. The big one, GM in England. The pharmaceuticals. Help me, Sativex. Who does Sativex?
Yeah, I don't recall.
Why can't I remember? It's such an important. They were the first to go public with something too. Gosh darn it! Why can't I remember that? Oh man. And Donnie Worshafter was a big part of it too for a while.
Right.
It's funny that we can't remember the name of this very important company. But anyways, back in the day, Robert Connell Clark was part of it, and so he, along with a brother named Michael Sullivan, who had relocated to, I think his company was called Planet Hemp or something, or no, not Hemp, People's Hemp, the People's Hemp. China. Right. Michael Sutherland was actually living in Kunming, so the three of us got together out there, and we went on the most wild trip of the southwestern Himalayas in Yunnan province on the border of Laos and Burma, way up on the border of Tibet, in Yunnan, all in Yunnan province there, and got to experience hemp being grown in the most remote villages, and none of these people had ever heard of smoking weed. It was all about using survival hemp. To really see hemp where it was no joke. I mean, certainly we got our hands on textiles and whatnot, but it seemed to always kind of have a a culture, real American kind of thing going on. But even though the textiles were from China, who never stopped making textiles.
Right.
Actually, mostly for funeral rites. Turns out that hemp has been used in Asian cultures, Korea, Japan, and certainly with the Han Chinese as part of funeral textiles and shrouds and those kinds of things. So,
on that note, I don't mean to cut you off, but you're saying, so the word pajama in Chinese is pajima, or what I should say is pajima in Chinese means hemp death robe, because paji is like pajamas and ma is hemp, so it's like your hemp death robe.
Wow.
Pajama. That's what pajama. So when you go every night, you have a mini death and you put your pajamas on, you're putting your hemp death robe on.
Wow. So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So some of those big factories in China that would, engulf the whole village and the whole towns, and everybody'd be working in these Charles Dickens-esque style factories. Those kind of have been around for, I don't know, a better part of 100 years, and guys were always, aside from handmade hemp, those kind of hemp for the masses, and that's where most of the early hemp came out of, mostly just one or two or three factories, but that was, I think, the main reason for those guys to be in business. But to actually go out there and see hemp being hand spun in the villages and being raised for the animals, and then seeing that the hemp seeds were being eaten by old and sick people and given to sick animals, and seeing the medicinal qualities of the hemp seed, and actually seeing the different seeds bred out for consumption. I want to say those are some of the early seeds that later found their way into the Canadian breeding programs for the hemp nut that we enjoy today. So that was going to be that was in the mid to late. I think it was like 97 that I went out there. With,
you went out in 97. Okay, yeah, and then 98
right,
is when it became legal in Canada.
Right. So we were doing some of that early
legwork.
Kind of, strain hunting.
Awesome. Literal legwork in the Himalayas.
Right, getting out there. So before strain hunting became a thing,
that
was industrial hemp strain hunting. Although, Andre, I would like to point out that those are cultivars.
They're varietals or cultivars, right?
Right. So if we want to be botanically correct, cultivar collected. So that's what we were doing, and that was a big and amazing adventure. And since you mentioned two different things,
the second biggest highlight.
I was right. The second biggest highlight is going to be an opportunity that I had to consult for a company that was using one of the new licenses in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe came online for marijuana, but also for hemp. So I was able to grow some brick seeds over there, and I did. We were also growing high THC cultivars, but I brought some industrial hemp cultivars out there and got to work on some acreage with that, and it was very challenging conditions. Mostly socially challenging conditions. This is kind of a big long story, but
that CBD varieties, the industrial hemp. So you were going like medical or recreational cannabis, but then you were also growing industrial hemp cannabis. Was that CBD based? Yeah. Okay.
It was CBD based, and also we did grow a fiber variety. I brought some seeds from Larry Serban, Hemp Traders. He kind of hooked me up with some seed that I wanted taking out there, Chinese fiber seeds, and they have some CBD content as well, but certainly it's the kind of more fiber variety, and to try to experiment in sub-Saharan southern Africa with these cultivars and different challenging conditions with the site and with the different light photo periods and whatnot that we're not used to. So that was another one, and I'm going to throw.
What was your biggest takeaway from that whole experience? Like because I had the privilege and honor of having a beautiful dinner with you not too long ago, and you went into details. So, like, if you were to share in a nutshell the biggest thing or like the most exciting thing about that, because I mean, just it sounds so romantic and exotic. Man, you got to go to Zimbabwe and grow hemp and cannabis. Like, what an amazing life experience.
Yeah, during the early days of COVID lockdown and a military dictatorship,
right?
It was pretty far out.
Yeah.
It was a pretty high adventure, and certainly working with people that had fought in a civil war against kind of an apartheid regime, and trying to patch up the whole white and black thing, and trying to on my own, outside of working with this company, to develop whatever small little social programs I could as an individual. That it's certainly a feel good thing. I've always been as much as I could be as an individual. I love people, and certainly people, trying to do my best to, whenever I can, to work with kind of impoverished and suffering people, try to do what I can to put smiles on faces and on whatever limited thing I could, kind of, just share the love as much as I could was probably the most profound part of it. But certainly being able to be the cultivation director, and at one point I'll just be real about it. I was with a tribe of folks, and wound up being kind of the only person I'll just be real, the only white person out there for about 40 miles,
right.
and trying, and certainly being the director of the whole thing, and was really special and challenging, and trying to learn how to integrate as much as I could with the tribe, and learn the language, and learn some of the customs, and try to flow with it the best I could in the midst of what the country has a very difficult history with apartheid, and to try to try to represent love in that space was very profound, and I certainly learned a lot about what to do and what not to do, and but then working with the plant, especially with trying to overcome challenges. Trying to find solutions in a place where there was not a lot of resources. So you can't go to the hydro store or even the farmer's supply.
Right.
I mean, you can get urea and ammonium nitrate and some basic things, but to try to stick to my ideals of being earth friendly and natural and organic, and try to find my way to the chicken farms, and like find a bat cave and go in it and try to collect high nitrogen bat manure, and collecting mulch out of other fields and spreading mulch, and anything we could do to try to make this work, and to see some success at the end of it was very gratifying, and to do it all in a COVID lockdown and again a military dictatorship where they literally where if you got closer than 6 feet the military to any other individual, the military was there with a long stick, and they just no jury, no court, no nothing, just a whap over the head with a stick, So so got to deal with some very challenging things, and I tell you, people deal with all kinds of pests, and there's the hemp russet mite and everything else, but how many folks do you know actually had to fend off their crop from baboons? These guys would hop the fence and start ripping your plants out of the ground.
Wow.
So that was super challenging. But again, to overcome some of those challenges, that is going to be one of the most profound, far out cannabis adventures in general that I've ever had in my life, and so I'm grateful to God for that experience, and so those are going to be the two big ones for sure.
Molds you and it shapes you, your perception, your experience of this plant, and I mean, in fact, I just gave a presentation for Earth Day. And it was called Hemp Pays for Peace, How to Make Everyday Earth Day. And, I feel like hemp is this vehicle for literally paying for peace on Earth, and literally weaving a fabric of life that is based on harmony with our ecosystems and with nature, and no longer having to go to war and pillage and drill and destroy our environment in order to get the resources we need for our food, shelter, and clothing. And so it's tough when you see countries that are still, taken over or at war, and you've got to work through that. And but I think hemp is still a vehicle nonetheless for whatever's happening on the planet. And that kind of leads me. Yeah. Did you want to comment on that?
Fun fact. Another use of hemp or cannabis that's kind of little known outside of Zimbabwe is, a big part of the faith-based system there. People are super into witchcraft, right? And it turns out that cannabis is used to fight black magic and witchcrafts out there. So, so it's kind of seen as an antidote to spells and whatnot. So I got to kind of experience that firsthand out there, interestingly enough, and being the guy that brings the cannabis to the village certainly put me in a favorable light with a lot of with a lot of folks, and kind of got my ego going a little bit, but anyways, it was it was very profound. So yeah, that's just another one of the many uses of cannabis. But
I remember
certainly
a very, very wild story you told me about that. We don't have to go into it now, but that is very part of their culture, and that's awesome. You got to experience that level of it, because I do see hemp as a spiritual vehicle. It's not just, and that's why our company is called Hemp Aware. It's the hemp is like the physical, tangible tool for peace on earth, but it requires awareness. And what is awareness? Awareness is consciousness. It's kindredness. It's familiarity, and so I feel like that's essential is that spiritual side of things too, knowing that unity and connection. But considering the world is getting destroyed and there's so many problems we're dealing with our environment, what do you feel, Denny, are some of the most important hemp products on the market today that people could be using that are going to help our overall economy, but also ecology?
Well, certainly hemp for building materials, for carbon sequestration. You're seeing some, especially in Europe, some big important buildings. There's a equivalent to Walmart called Marks and Spencer's out in England, and they've built their flagship store out of hemp. So it can be done on a big scale, using hemp for building materials to cut back on cement and other building materials, which to extract from the earth certainly takes a lot of petrochemical resource. And as you probably and many listeners know, the biggest source of human pollution is housing and keeping, building and keeping houses, construction, as well as, keeping homes warm and cool. And the construction part of it is bigger than automotive, bigger than any other source of pollution. Right. So to put hemp in the mix there is going to certainly cut back on that. Years ago there was a guy named Owen Circus who was part of the Fashion Institute of Technology out in New York City, and he was kind of an interesting. He was a professor out there, and he said, even if you're adding 2% of hemp into a textile, it's cutting back on the overall pollution that, in the textile industry. But that goes without saying for any other industry. So any amount of hemp that you can use in certainly have a plant-based product that can sequester carbon depending on how it's being used. I think that's really important. One of the years ago now, and I don't know what's happened with the research, but you and I were talking about this not long ago, to replace the rare earth graphene in battery superconductor. Supercapacitor. Yeah. Supercapacitor. Yeah, I'm like kind of a layperson when it comes to all this high tech talk.
Too,
but from what I was to understand, is the way that the hemp fiber on a molecular level is layered, it can act as a storage for the electrons in batteries and replace a very expensive per gram substance that requires extensive mining to do that with our favorite plant. Or I'm not sure exactly, but I know that research was being done. I think it was graphene, from what I remember, which is one of the, not graphite like the pencil, but graphene. And certainly I should have prepared a little bit more and been more knowledgeable about it. But from what I understand, hemp, with the research that's being done, can replace some of these more expensive rare earth minerals that are being used in batteries. And of course, for renewable resource energy, we need to have energy storage, which is the battery. When you look at some of these cars and every other thing, it's the battery component in a solar system, whatever, that winds up being one of the more expensive, difficult parts of renewable energy. So
and toxic, right?
And toxic. So I do see that aspect of being able to use that if it does come to
Amazing.
pass, that the research is proven to be effective for production. I see that being one of the more important things for
Absolutely.
hemp.
Yeah, in fact, when Dodie, my beloved hempress, as I like to refer to her, we were out for a walk today, and the realization came to me that, as a human, if we could simply master the three basic elements of life, which are earth, water, and then the third one, which is the third chakra. Earth is the first chakra, water is the second chakra, and third is electricity, or energy, or light, or the sun.
Shakti.
Yeah, the Shakti, energy, exactly. So yeah, if we as human beings can just get down those three basic elements of life and really, own your own land, own your own soil, understand what the soil is. In the Bible it says, "And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul." So it's the earth that becomes animated by the water. The water is like emotion and the energy in motion. And then the electricity is the third level. So it's like the electricity charges the water, and the minerals, the earth, dissolve into the water. Anyway, this is what we are. We're made up of these things. And so hemp is just one of an extension. Once you have the earth and the water and the electricity, then you can form life. That's when the seed is formed. But anyway, I'm getting a little more esoteric than I might have planned.
Well, no, because energy everywhere, Shakti everywhere. It's out there. We certainly need it and use it. And another interesting thing with hemp is hemp being used in a pyrolysis, like a gasification, to produce methane, actually, and methane to be used to burn, to kind of spin the wheel, so to speak, to produce electricity. With hemp being an annual crop, you could potentially enough hemp, and of course you're just burning it, but the way that it's burned in a gasifier and a gasification process, it actually creates a carbon biochar, which is a wonderful substance for carbon sequestration and also just for plant nutrients. So that kind of comes completed. So if you can use all the highway dividers and all of the any kind of ground that's marginal, let's say, or you could potentially be growing your electricity by using hemp and some of these, and gasification process.
That is so amazing. So this is where the rubber really hits the road, and where this becomes an economic solution. And because then we get in. So your kind of two things are, number one, homes. Like that is one of the most important things that hemp can solve, not only for the pollution of our environment, but also the building materials that are currently being used are destroying our health. People are dealing with sick building syndrome, mold out the wazoo, VOCs and toxic glues, and just carpets and things that collect these toxic compounds. So that, and then energy is everything. And you said it. Hemp as a fuel source and energy source, those are two amazing solutions, I think, that are crucial, and appreciate you sharing that. So I kind of want to shift gears, unless you had another thought there.
No, go ahead.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about, you've seen this hemp industry evolve and grow. You were involved before it was cool, where it was still demonized and people didn't really understand it. How can you describe the hemp industry when you first got into it versus today? Like, how do you perceive it, and what are some of the changes?
Actually, we were the coolest back in the day. Jack was the coolest of all time, and sure. just a pleasure, and wonderful to be around, and I was honored to be able to work with him to help bring awareness. So back in the day, it was really the only thing you get your hands on was these twine and textiles, and interestingly enough, there was sterilized bird seed. And I remember back in the day, there was a guy out of Santa Cruz, I think his name was Evan. He was making ice cream out of that stuff, out of sterilized bird seeds, and back in the day, there was also Chile had some hemp seed oil way back, but it would always come into the country rancid, and we were just out there just trying to do whatever we could to promote hemp using these real life products that we could get our hands on. And but that's kind of all there was, and we kind of use these products as tools to raise awareness, kind of keep the fire alive for hemp and for cannabis in general. And so that that was pretty important. But certainly with the Farm Bill of 2014, that changed everything. And we fought for that Farm Bill. The HIA was part of that, and certainly Vote Hemp. The lobbying efforts of us being down on the Capitol for many years, and just kind of trying to hold the torch. Well, eventually we did get the Farm Bill passed with the Hemp 7606 section on there that allowed for industrial hemp, and once it actually was safe to grow hemp and be around hemp, that certainly changed the game. And let's say at that point, it kind of allowed more serious, players. Of course, Canada had their thing going, and we were able to get, the hemp food and all that. That was huge. That kind of started to change things with the hemp nut. But of course, it was it still had to be shelled and sterile for being able to grow. But once it started to pop off with the 2014 hemp, the Farm Bill, you had a lot of new faces coming in to see what could be done, and of course it was CBD that became the thing, cannabidiol, which was something that we kind of knew about, but it wasn't so explored because it just wasn't a possibility. According to
it was Schedule
federal
1
cannabis laws, right? So we couldn't really do much about it. Then certainly that opened the door for it, and then that just kind of blew the doors wide open for a lot of folks to get into it. And then you kind of saw the culture of it shift from an activist point of view to really kind of a more business,
entrepreneurial,
more let's say responsible business,
professional,
more professional from the and I do kind of miss the days of the activism and the passion that was there, and the passion now seems to be kind of more about how can we get this hemp to get me my new Lamborghini kind of thing, which is okay. I mean, I can't hate too much. In fact, that is what's going to ultimately drive it, is successful business, to be able to help Earth. And part of it is bittersweet because we did.
And you can bring your heart into the business. There's always going to be those out there that are in it just for the money, but even if people are just now getting into the industry, I work with folks that have such good hearts and they have really good intentions, but they want to make good money too. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, at HempAware, we say, we're here to make a difference and a dollar.
Right.
Because it's dollars that make change.
So that is a fundamental change that I've seen, and it's probably about time, honestly, because certainly the human life goes on beyond us having fun and holding the flame and shouting in Congress and whatnot, and digging up the lawns of the DEA and planting hemp seeds, and Woody Harrelson way back when planting hemp seeds in Kentucky in the 90s, and kind of like those acts were of bravery and were certainly very profound, but, to see folks actually being able to generate income with hemp and
career.
It's been
wealth.
I've seen that it's been mostly around cannabinoids, this certainly CBD, but we are starting to see a little bit of traction with textile, not so much textiles, more building, and but one thing that's kind of been sad to see, if you really added up the whole world's cannabinoid needs, one big Midwest farmer could do it, honestly. It's not a lot of acreage when it comes down to how much cannabinoids one could produce per acre, and the need for certainly our own country's needs. I think it's we did the math. It's been a minute, but probably 1,000 acres is probably about all you'd really need. And I actually had the pleasure to work with some farmers in eastern Colorado near the Kansas border. We did 500 acres of hemp, and there's just so many people growing such an amount of hemp that you saw the great cannabinoid hemp market just totally crash, and a lot of speculative farmers, that thought that they were going to do really well, really crashed and burned. The farmers that I worked with were pretty smart, and they're really big time guys that do 15,000 acres of crops. So for them, they learned a lot and continue to play with hemp a little bit. But on the scale of farming, I mean, that one farm could produce most of this whole country's needs for cannabinoids. So if you look at it like that, it's small. The amount of space that you need, but for fiber, for all the things that fiber could be added to, injection mold, plastics, all these kinds of things, there hasn't been the investment and the infrastructure that one would hope to see, and I hope to see in my lifetime, certainly. And it is slowly starting to catch on a little bit. But
in the spirit of entrepreneurship, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you want to finish that?
No. Yeah.
We're talking about, the industry's building up, and it is happening. There's more and more companies investing in, like actually with our company, Bulk Hemp Warehouse, we just had a group order some of our degummed hemp fiber for the graphene, like you were saying. So there are companies investing in this, and it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time before we see the big money invest in the machinery to develop some of these, higher value products. But my curious question next, kind of going into the, how the markets have shifted, the industry has shifted, and it's now not so much on the passionate, lobbying and educating and raising awareness per se, legalizing hemp. And now it's about the entrepreneurial, let's all grow hemp and make products out of hemp so we can live healthier, happier lives. That's kind of the new theme. What are some of the strategies that you've used as far as marketing some of your companies? I know you've done, physical products. You've helped with consulting and farming and different ways of running different businesses. But what are some of the techniques or strategies in marketing that you've done that you found it were helpful or successful?
Well, back in the day, going to the shows was great. There used to be a forum when it was just textiles for some of the big the fashion boutique shows in New York City. We used to have kind of an eco section there, so that kind of helped promote kind of trade organizations within trade shows to get the product out there. That's kind of one thing that I did see work. I'm kind of old school, so just to kind of be out there offering the product site seen, and so people could see and feel and touch it. That's kind of always been my approach. But I guess, of course, with the internet, being clever there and having somebody that knows what they're doing there to try to get it out there seems to be kind of the way all businesses are happening.
Mm-hmm.
So that's.
But even word of mouth today is super crucial. You're going to events, live in-person stuff. Word of mouth. That's like one of the most powerful forms of marketing for sure.
Yeah, there was never a day. I think I committed to decades of every day I had to have some article. Of course, I made it of clothing. I had my own shop where I was making my own clothes for many, many years, and so I would always wear a Crucial hemp garment, and it was, I just it was like a broken record everywhere I went. It was like all I could do was talk about how I'm wearing hemp, and of course, it was like, well, can you smoke it, and can you smoke it, and all that was one of the old kind of gags that everybody used to have. And turned out one of the biggest uses for hemp that I knew about was from hemp flax company out in the Netherlands, Ben Dronkers and the Dronkers family of Sunseed Seeds. Turns out they had one of the biggest, they still have one of the biggest decortication plants in the world. And the main use of their hemp was for selling to mainstream cigarette paper companies. So indeed, smoking it was the main use for it. Actually, interestingly enough. But
although
but yeah,
get you high, still.
To go to the shows, to get it out there was certainly the most endearing thing to me. To get it in people's hands and to try to go to venues that were outside of activism and alternative cultures, to try to reach mainstream crowds. One of the things that Crucial Hemp did early on was I tried to design something that I thought that Nancy Reagan would enjoy to wear. Just like just something really straight, and we were one of the first companies.
Not a big potato sack.
Right. So that was one of the early things that I tried to do was have like a kind of a smart 3-piece suit.
I always was inspired by your attire. It made me invest in custom tailored hemp outfits, which I wear now. It's just like it makes you feel so good, and I always seeing you wear white too, because that was a big part of my spiritual practice. Like wearing white or bright colors. And that always inspired me seeing you at shows. So
early on, I managed to get a suit in the hands of legislative folks. There was a guy named Fred Maslach way back in the day who was a state representative in Vermont, which was one of the first to kind of adopt rules for hemp, legalizing hemp. Being prepared for the federal on a state level, state by state was how we used to do it. But I was really proud of NPR doing a segment on it, and they mentioned my hemp suit on that. So I was kind of got raised some awareness there, and so just again just trying what you can do to just not quit. And staying with it and trying to provide an example that people can see, feel, and touch is what makes the difference, I think.
And all of the demonization over the last 8-9 decades of cannabis being demonized, hemp being demonized, it's kind of in our subconscious and in our psyche, and so by giving a new perspective or associating hemp in a way that is like almost like, I don't know if this is the right word, but a juxtaposition, where it's like hemp is typically associated with, dirty hippie, but when you come showing up in a 3-piece suit, it's like, wait a minute, this really gets you to think differently. So it is very powerful.
One of my early products was baby jumpers. So for cute little babies, we used to dress them up in hemp. So that goes way back. Little onesies and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of our listeners are hemp-entrepreneurs, company owners, and maybe they're just getting started with a company. Some of them are longtime hempsters. But if you were to give some advice to someone starting a new hemp company, what advice would you want to share with them to help them avoid some of the pains or mistakes that you've made and help them on the path?
Well, number one, and I guess that'd be true for any business, would be know your market and have an idea of who you're going to sell this stuff to. So if you can master that first and foremost, to have a plan, figure out who your buyer is. That's probably the single most important thing, and I guess most business, So try to have an idea of who's going to buy it, so that investment, that spent can be recovered quickly and then turned back around into it. I would say that would be the number one thing, and be prudent about how you spend your your principal, your money when you first get going. It was nice to go to all those trade shows and whatnot, but when the booths are so extremely expensive, and then some of the early magazines that came out, there was one magazine that was a High Times thing, and I've heard Hemp Planet. I can't remember what's the name of their shop, but anyways, it was a hemp magazine, and they were always trying to get you to put a full page, color, all color, or a couple pages, and it's like every month we trying to pretend like we're Vogue and Elle, and next thing you know, you spent a big part of your budget on high gloss advertising, which is something that it's kind of a mistake I think that I made early on, and maybe there's more interesting ways to reach your market, but find out who your customer is, and
those are two really crucial insights. I mean, that's knowing your target market, like you said, because a lot of people start a business and they make a product and you ask them, so who's your customer? Oh, everybody. No, that's not the answer. If you market to everybody, you market to nobody. And a lot of my marketing teachers and books that I've read, courses I've taken on marketing and target marketing, the more niched you can be, the more success you're likely to experience. Because the more you know your customer, the more you understand their pain points, their problems, and how your product solves their problems, and telling that in a really engaging story, you can make a huge difference, but sell your product. So that was crucial. And then number two, I think, is a huge thing too, which I have followed for many, many years, which is try to find as much free marketing as you can. Don't go spend a bunch of money on advertising until you know that your product works, until people are experiencing benefits, and you've got your sales funnel kind of dialed in. And there's a lot of organic marketing methods out there these days that are kind of essential, because advertising is a huge, what am I trying to say? Hemp is banned on a lot of advertising networks, cannabis and hemp. So it's like you got to get creative and come up with ways that are free in the first place. But once you can prove you can get sales by doing free marketing, then I think it's important to invest in paid. So I'm totally on the same page with you there.
Yeah, don't feel super pressured into having to, feel like you're Versace or something, where you need to, absolutely every month, have or L. It's just or the humble equivalent in our own industry. Just be careful of falling into that trap, I'd say. Until you really can or do have the market, which is kind of a stretch.
So tell us a little bit about your product line. You've got Crucial Hemp still, crucialhemp.com, where you've got some of your cannabinoid CBD-based products. Tell us a little bit about those, or how people can learn more about what you're offering these days.
Certainly, it's one thing that kind of sets us apart from most companies. There are some other companies doing it. I've always embraced natural lifestyle. I'm a vegetarian person. I eat only natural foods. So one thing I saw folks doing with extracting cannabinoids is using kind of solvents and kind of harsher solvents, and then some of these kind of fancy CBD rigs and whatever, all this kind of heavy duty stuff. I kind of realized early on that cannabinoids are easily extracted from the plant with any kind of oils or lipid. And so I've taken my company in the direction of the most natural processing of all, which is just soaking your flowers in oil. It's as simple as that. And,
what kind of oil?
I like to use actually hemp seed oil. Now I've heard a little bit controversy about that, like it might not be the most efficient to extract with, but certainly from my testing, it gets everything I need out of it. And then you also get the benefit of
EFAs,
the EFAs and the amino acids and the B6s and the B3s and all the different components that the hemp seed oil provides. And also I use extra virgin coconut oil, which is another very healing oil and plant. So for some of my products, I have that. So that's kind of what I've committed to, is not even using alcohol to extract. So I'm just using the oils, which can limit you as far as your level of cannabinoids. So I'm not trying to have 5,000 milligrams of CBD in a tincture. I personally do feel like, as important as cannabidiol is CBD, there's 400 chemical compounds that we know of in this plant, and many more that we don't know of. And I like the idea of gently trying to extract with this oil, so that the synergy of all of these compounds can be enhanced by the existence of them, by not isolating chemical compounds through short path distillations and those kinds of things, which one of the things I really didn't fall in love with right away was CBD isolate. I felt like I think we're missing out on a lot of the benefits. I mean, we fought so hard for hemp to be able to be used, that why aren't we trying to use all of everything that's legal and available, and as much as possible, just knowing instinctively and intuitively that the closer to the earth what the plant is giving us that we can get, the better off we're going to be for human health in general. So that's
closer to the raw state.
And there are some other there are some other companies that are doing it well, but that's one thing that Crucial Hemp commits to. And it's funny because that's kind of my company, Crucial Creations, Crucial Hemp, always only had 100% hemp textiles. I never mixed up with, we used to call it cotton. We used to call it cotton. Hemp mixed with cotton.
I forgot about that.
Cotton. So I was always a 100% hemp guy. And as far as the HIA goes, I was a charter member. I helped to form the HIA, and the HIA was formed in the early days as an industries association to help promote true hemp. In the early days, there was a lot of folks that saw hemp getting popular, and like the hippie shops and some of the shops and whatnot, and a cheaper textiles were being made out of nettles and some of these other plants in Asia, and they looked a lot like the kind of rougher hemp textiles back in the day, and they were selling them as hemp. And so that's the reason the Hemp Industries Association got founded, and I became the director of testing the products. And we had a true hemp cation, so I was involved in the early days of certifying hemp.
So were you
for
able
being
to
actually
take
hemp?
I remember that about you, and that's super cool. And on that point, were you like able to take a product, like let's say you found someone that said, they were selling a hemp bag made out of hemp canvas. Were you able to like take those fibers and send them to a lab, or how would you discover?
Exactly. I think it was chromos. What's the name? Spectrometry or whatever it was. Gas chromatography or whatever it was. We would send our samples to the Fashion Institute of Technology, and those guys would break it down there for us, and they would send us, photos of microscopic images of it, and then they would do the chemical testing, and it was so exciting to see that these products would come back as 100% cannabis sativa, to see the words cannabis sativa in those days coming back scientifically from the Fashion Institute, was pretty exciting. But yeah, that's where we did our testing, was Fashion Institute Technology in Manhattan.
Very cool. And back then, like you were saying, cannabinoids, CBD wasn't even a thing. It was like, which, nowadays the HIA, a lot of their conversations and events, and they were saturated with cannabinoid and CBD companies. But now we're finding that we're going to swing back the other way and go back into seed and fiber, where it all began. So that's going to be, I think, a whole new wave of revolutionary companies creating phenomenal hemp products, whether it's plastic or to energy and building. I'm finding, like, I do research all the time on who I can bring on Hemp Aware Radio, and I can tell you there's more and more hemp building companies popping up, consultants and construction companies, and that are really wanting to build with hemp, and that just excites me to the bone. I love it.
Yes, certainly. Certainly interesting to see. England was on the forefront of that, and I forget the guy's name. Eastern European brother. Anyways, the Lime Technologies. I forget their name. The guy's name. Gosh darn it. Super cool. That being the forefront and the early guys doing that. Now seeing that it's kind of becoming a thing. Have you heard of this company in Portland that is actually getting? I think they can even do it now with non-decorticated hemp. So they can just kind of chop up the plants, probably in a hammer mill or something, and mix it with cement. I don't know if you've heard of that yet. But it used to be from hemp herds that you would mix in with the lime way back in the day. And, of course, there was Isho Chambre, which was a French company going way back. That was one of the first to really do it. And so to see now that it's kind of advancing and to hear that a lot of the CBD byproducts, the crops and the stalks from that are actually getting just hammer milled up and mixed in with cement, or lime or cement, I think, actually. Yeah, I think there's a company in Portland that's doing that, and so that's certainly pretty interesting, because the decortication process is quite involved. I had the pleasure to go to the hemp flax facility and out of Pecos. I mean, that thing is massive. We're talking acres under a roof and huge machines. And for millions and millions and millions invested in for years and years and years. I think last year was the first year that hemp flax actually turned a profit, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody
No
can
kidding.
correct me if I'm wrong, but finally, after everything that Ben and the Drunkard family, Alan and Robbie, have done for years and years, Mark Renders over there, Reinders, those guys have just put their hearts and souls into that thing since the 90s. I remember the early 90s, mid 90s. Those guys
We'll
have
have
been
to
working
reach out
with
to
it.
them. Maybe they'll come on the show.
Yeah, check in with Alan. I think Ben's living pretty cozy in Malaysia these days.
Right.
But certainly, having put all that together, I was actually one of the first guys to bring those products into America, just so that people again could see, feel, and touch hemp herds and hemp fibers. They had the hemp parada for the animal bedding, but that is the hemp herds, the decorticated cellulose from the inside of the stalk of the hemp plant, was the main ingredient for the building materials. And I guess that is changing a little bit now, where people are discovering that you don't necessarily have to decorticate, but I could be wrong again there too. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I've had a few builders in the last few months, and they kind of all agree that it is good to have more herd, not too much bast. It's okay if there's a little bit, maybe 1, 2, 3% at the very most.
Okay.
But my understanding is the way the cellulosic structure of the herd kind of binds with the lime, whereas the bast fiber doesn't really have, I guess, as much binding capability because it has the lignin. So I don't know.
Okay.
It's we're going to learn more as we move forward. And the U.S. Hemp Building Association, ushb.org, is doing some really great legwork there and raising awareness and working on building codes and everything. But it's been super fun having you, Denny. I'm so thankful for the conversation. And if you have any last thoughts, or wherever people can find you, if you're still doing consulting on farms these days, how can people reach you there? Or just go to the website or share your info?
Yeah, certainly. Crucialhemp.com. I'm available there. So if you want to leave a comment there, crucialhemp.com is the best way to get a hold of me. That's going to be the best way to get a hold of me.
Right on.
And certainly, love to be involved in any kind of consulting project for farming. There are some tricks, and certainly I will travel. I love the adventures. I think it's important for the whole world to be involved on whatever level they can, if it's appropriate. We're learning. I've learned a lot about what it's like to grow in different climates, and look forward to other countries coming online. I think Mexico is going to be coming up here pretty soon, and I would love to be involved in bringing hemp to Mexico. I actually worked on a candy bar project down there, so we'll see if I can keep that going on. So there's just a number of opportunities in the world that certainly, if I'm also open source, so leave a message for me, and I'll chat about it all day long. And what I know, I'll usually freely kind of give advice there. Whatever I know, I'll spend a lot of time with anybody on the phone that is truly coming from a heart space that wants to work hemp and use hemp to help improve, human evolution. So that's what it's all about, is evolving as humans. We're only here for a short time, but certainly what we know about the plant is it has been with humans for thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands of years. And so to have played a small part in the reintroduction of hemp in modern times, again, a very small part, has just been meant the world to me. And if there's anything I could do to help continue to introduce it to people, I'd love that opportunity.
Right on.
Do you want me to go to war-torn Africa and grow it for you, though? That's going to cost you. That's going to cost you.
Yeah, of course. You've been there, done that.
And if you treat people wrong, it might cost you your company.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways. So,
well, it's just an honor and a privilege to have a friend and a colleague and a fellow hempster. You definitely inspire others and have done some monumental things to bring hemp to the planet. So I thank you for your kindred spirit and kind work, and really look forward to making it hemp into the future with you. So thanks everyone for tuning in.
All right. Well, it's been a real blessing, and keep up with your enthusiasm, Tyler. Love you a lot, brother.
My pleasure. If you have a hemp company but you need help making sales or fine-tuning your hemp website or getting seen with masterful branding, graphic, and web design, feel free to reach out to us on hempaware.com, or you can send us an email if you're looking for a new idea or a new topic you want us to cover. Just send that over to support@hempaware.com. This is your hemp entrepreneurial host, Tyler Hemp. Let's make it hempin'. See you, everyone.